Two little questions. The one is, my daughter-in-law, who usually lights 4 candles, this past Shabbos, for some reason, she lit 5.
No, she lit 4.
And she just, I don't know, she doesn't know why, she just lit 5. Is that a problem in terms of going forward?
In terms of going forward, absolutely no problem whatsoever. She's perfectly free to return to her practice of four candles. That she lit an extra candle is lovely. That's good. I mean, there's more kavod Shabbat, but she's in no sense obligated to continue doing that. Now, there is a minhag which many women have, particularly for those of Eastern European backgrounds, to add an extra candle for every child that is born. The source of this minhag is not attested in the literature, and therefore the reason for the minhag, which I'm about to suggest, is not something I learned in any sefer, because the Sfarim simply don't talk about it. Rather, it's something which seems reasonable to me. In the good old days, when all was right with the world, before modern medicine came along, women in confinement was the old word for giving birth to children. Women in confinement, that means women just after giving birth, were not permitted to leave their beds for around 2 weeks. That was believed to be the healthiest way for the woman to recover from the effort of giving birth. I mean, nowadays, of course, the fuddy-duddy modern physicians have just reversed their position, and I think it's better to get out of bed as quickly as you can. But what do modern doctors know? So back in the good old days, in German, for example, the word for confinement, a woman giving birth and being confined to bed, the German word is Wöchnerin. The week long, the 7 days, the week long confinement, Wöchnerin. Well, the first Shabbos after giving birth, the woman was not allowed out of bed to light Shabbos candles, and therefore she missed one Shabbos in lighting Shabbos candles, and that's why she would add an additional candle going forward from then on. This is probably the origin of the practice. Nowadays, a woman who, for whatever reason, did not light Shabbos candles, all kinds of circumstances can arise, whatever the circumstances are. If she did switch on electric lights, lichvod Shabbat, if she switched on an electric light somewhere in the house to be on for Shabbos, that is a minimal fulfillment of the mitzvah of Ner Shabbos, and there's no need for her to increase the numbers going on. And usually one sets the lights before Shabbos, and that'll usually cover the woman. Okay, that's enough about the number. What's the second issue? No, I don't hear. No, I don't hear you. Is it only me? No, I don't hear you. You don't hear me. I don't hear you. No. No, don't hear. No, don't hear you. Oh, now I hear you.
I'm having a bit of difficulty here. The question is, oh gosh, this is a disaster. The question.
I'm viewing you. Oh, there we go. Okay, now we're back to the PC.
So the question is, if one uses tea bags on Shabbos.
Oh, yeah. A Jewish person? Okay.
Apparently, what can I tell you? So is there a difference? Is it preferable? Does it make a difference whether you put the water from the kli sheni into the kli shlishi and then add the tea bag, or you put the tea bag in the kli shlishi and pour the water onto it in the shlishi. Is there any difference? Is one
Yes,
better?
yeah. The first way is preferable. First, the hot water, and then the tea bag. That's preferable.
One would think.
Yeah, that's preferable, but not obligatory. Those who are doing it the other way around are not guilty, Chas v'shalom, of violating Shabbos. But if the question is, what is adif? The stricter position would be first water and then the tea bag.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now, regarding this, I will tell you a story. In my youth, not so long ago, I was living in Boston, which is a city in the United States, North America. And I had friends who had invited the Rav for a Shabbos meal. And the Rav came to their house for a Shabbos meal, and they had prepared everything perfectly in order to host the Rav. And of course, the Rav wanted tea at the end of the meal, and they had prepared tea essence, tea extract in order to prepare the tea, and they prepared the tea for him according to the strictest opinions they knew of, to which the Rav said, "Don't you have a tea bag?" Okay,
That's
that's a story.
that's
Um,
a true story.
Someone told the family, which the son in the family which invited the Rav told me this story. Yes.
He was a Jewish Rav.
Okay. Tov, do we have any other questions of a halachic nature before we begin with our topic our topic for today is eating and or drinking before davening in the morning, and this naturally has to do also with eating and drinking before Kiddush on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Before we get to that material, are there other issues of a halachic nature that any of you wish to address? All is well. Let me get the stuff on the screen. Here, voila. Okay. Now, the basic idea is as follows. There is an Isur D'Rabbanan, a rabbinic prohibition to eat or drink when the time of davening comes along until you've done. This is true with most, not all, this is true with most mitzvot aseh. Doesn't matter whether the mitzvah is D'Rabbanan or D'Oraisa. When the time for the mitzvah comes, you're not allowed to eat or drink until you do mitzvah, for fear that once you get eating and drinking, you might neglect the mitzvah. For example, it's almost Kislev, Hanukkah is coming. When it's time to light Hanukkah candles, nighttime, we could talk at length about the different opinions about whether the time of lighting Hanukkah candles begins at Plag Mincha or at sunset or at the appearance of the stars. That's a subject for a different time. But once the time for lighting Hanukkah candles comes, you're not allowed to eat or drink until you've done the mitzvah of lighting candles. Now, as far as this rabbinic prohibition of eating and drinking is concerned, the poskim are agreed that this prohibition does not apply to children under the age of bar and bas mitzvah. After all, children under the age of bar or bas mitzvah are davening or making kiddush or whatever the mitzvah is. They're doing it because of chinuch, in order to get ready for being a bar mitzvah or a bas mitzvah. And the one mitzvah in the Torah, the one mitzvah where there is no issue of chinuch is fasting. We do not require children to fast under bar or bas mitzvah. We do not require them to fast on Yom Kippur or any other fast day. And since fasting does not fall under the category of chinuch, therefore, a child under bar or bas mitzvah has no particular prohibition to eat or drink before davening. Of course, as the child gets older, it's the parents' responsibility to determine when that child is sufficiently mature enough to begin practicing this mitzvah, this halacha, that halacha. But this is for the parents to decide. There's no halachic obligation for children to fast. This is why in many synagogues outside of Israel, where they make kiddush in the synagogue on Friday night. In Israel, it's not a common practice, but outside of Israel, it is. Well, whoever's making kiddush in the synagogue on Friday night is not fulfilling his or her mitzvah of kiddush. Of course, in a frum shul, it's always going to be a man and not a woman. But therefore, that person making kiddush is not allowed to eat or drink until making kiddush at home. Therefore, children are called upon to drink the grape juice or the wine or whatever it is that kiddush was pronounced over, because children under bar or bas mitzvah have no obligation to fast, have no chinuch of fasting. Okay, now let's address specifically the question of women eating or drinking before davening, and exactly the same issues apply to men. There is no halachic difference here between men and women, but the question is usually couched, usually formulated in feminine, because it's usually women who are busy at home taking care of the household who have this question. Here goes. The first text we have is from the Minchas Yitzchak, Dayan Yitzchak Weiss. He was born in Poland. He was a Dayan in Hungary before the Holocaust. Then in he was the head of the Eda Haredit, the Eda Haredis in Mea Shearim. The question they asked him is, Im mutar l'nashim, is it permissible for women to eat something before they daven in the morning? The imochlod b'Shabbos kodem shachris. What about on Shabbos? If they eat before davening, should they make kiddush first? So the question is twofold, really two elements of the same question. Is it permissible to eat before davening? And if so, on Shabbos and Yom Tov, do you have to first make kiddush? The question could equally have been asked by a man. He begins quoting the sources. Last week, we saw the opinion of the Magen Avram. The Magen Avram taught us last week that women have a minimal obligation of tefillah, one little tefillah a day. A simple bracha will do the job of fulfilling the obligation of davening. That's true with women. It's equally true with men. A man who, for whatever reason, is unable to fulfill the rabbinic obligations of Shacharis, Mincha, Ma'ariv, and so, at least the minimal Torah obligation of tefillah should be fulfilled. Any little bracha in the morning, not necessarily in the morning, but any little tefillah will fulfill the Torah obligation for davening. Nashim yotzot be'eza pakashasha omrim miyad achar netila. Women, and it's true for men as well, any bakasha, any petition, any prayer to God after washing their hands in the morning, b'chol lashon, it doesn't matter what language the prayer is in. Rashayim le'echol miyad, women can eat immediately after that. Men still have the rabbinic mitzvah of Shacharis, and therefore they have to first fulfill that before eating and drinking. Like Ner Hanukkah is a rabbinic obligation. That has to be fulfilled before you can eat the sufganiyot. Im kein ledidehu asurot lishtot mayim b'Shabbos kodem tefillah Shacharis. It follows, according to the Magen Avram, which was the opinion that all the great poskim grasped onto and embraced last week, according to the opinion of the Magen Avram, which becomes the mainstream opinion of all the poskim, that any little tefillah is sufficient for women in the morning, because they are not obligated to daven Shacharis, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. Therefore, on Shabbos and Yom Tov, once the women have said some little tefillah, whatever it might be, miyad she'amru eza bakasha, as soon as the woman has said some prayer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, chal alayu chavos kiddush. Now they have the obligation of kiddush before eating. The obligation of kiddush begins when you have davened. For men, after having davened Shacharis, now they're not allowed to eat and drink until they make Kiddush. According to the Magen Avram, which was the opinion last week that all the great poskim embraced, even though it's a great leniency, the great leniency of the Magen Avram, that any little tefillah is sufficient for women. Well, if it's Shabbos and Yontif, after some little tefillah, now the woman must make Kiddush before eating and drinking. Notice in passing that it's conceptually more or less impossible, perhaps totally impossible, to separate chumrah, strict positions, from kulot, lenient positions. The position of the Magen Avram that any little bakasha, any little tefillah is sufficient for women is a great leniency. All the great poskim embrace it, but it is a leniency. Women are not obligated to daven shachris minche ma'ariv. But this kula, this leniency, leads inevitably, logically, and forcefully to a chumrah, a strict conclusion that, of course, after having said some little bakasha, she cannot eat or drink on Shabbos or Yontif morning without first making Kiddush. Lenient. The opinion of the Magen Avram turns out to be a great leniency all week long, and exactly the same opinion turns out to be a chumrah, a strict position on Shabbos and Yom Tov. They can't eat or drink without first making Kiddush on Shabbos or Yontif morning. That is the conclusion which flows out of the Magen Avram, which was the mainstream opinion embraced by the poskim last week. Ulam, however, and these are still the words of the Minchas Yitzchak, the Eshel Avram, in the Sefer Eshel Avram. This Eshel Avram was written by Rav David Varman. That name is not well known in the Yeshiva world, but the Sefer Eshel Avram is a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch and is immensely influential. Unfortunately, there's another sefer with exactly the same name. There are two commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch with exactly the same name, Eshel Avram. First, Rav Yosef Ta'omim in the 18th century wrote this sefer, Eshel Avram, a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, immensely influential. Then around 80, 90 years later, Rav David Varman wrote his commentary on the Shulchan Aruch that we're about to quote from, and is also very influential, creating massive confusion when you talk about the opinion of the Eshel Avram. Which one are you talking about? So in order to make this clear in the Yeshiva world, whenever people talk about Eshel Avram without adding any qualifiers, they mean the earlier one, the first one by Rav Yosef Ta'omim. And in order to refer to this one, the Eshel Avram, the more recent one, since Rav David Varman was the Rav of the town of Buchac in Romania, this is usually called Eshel Avram Buchac. He was the Rav of Buchac. Now, Buchac was a major Jewish center. If you're interested in reading about it, I can recommend one of the great literary works of modern times, Shai Agnon, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, modern Hebrew author, Nobel Prize laureate. All his Sfarim are great, but one of his great Sfarim, one of his great novels is Oreach Natalalun, A Guest for the Night. In my opinion, which admittedly is not worth very much, I think it's the best Holocaust novel ever written. Remarkably, it was written around 20 years before the Holocaust. It's the story of the narrator who is visiting in the town of Buchach. The narrator came from Eretz Israel and is visiting the town of Buchach. And he arrives in the town of Buchach, which in the novel is called Shibush. He arrives in the town of Shibush on Erev Yom Kippur, quickly gets lodging in a room, and hastens off to shul, to the synagogue, for the prayers on Yom Kippur. This is how the story begins. He describes in great detail the prayers on Yom Kippur in the town of Buchach, and the whole story is taking place immediately after the conclusion of World War I, after the devastation of World War I. And as Yom Kippur comes to an end, on Yom Kippur late afternoon, a mahloket, a disagreement breaks out in the synagogue amongst the parishioners, amongst the daveners. Some wanted to daven quickly so as to end Yom Kippur exactly with the appearance of the stars. Others said, no, in honor of Yom Kippur, we should continue davening very slowly. After all, they argued, none of us has any food at home to eat after Yom Kippur. What sense does it make to rush? And then as the story continues, you learn all about the devastation resulting from World War I. This novel gives you the strongest feeling, the strongest awareness of what the devastation of the Holocaust was like, even though it was written around 20 years before the Holocaust. In any event, the Eshel Avram of Buchach, who happened to be Hasidic and therefore is particularly popular in Hasidic circles, Kevan dechayavim betfila midrabanan befrat misha mitpalelet tamid muteret lishtot. Since women have this minimal obligation of davening, well, what about a woman who has accepted upon herself in an ongoing way to daven Shacharis regularly? Perhaps she davens Shacharis every day of the week. Perhaps she has accepted upon herself in an ongoing way to daven Shacharis on Shabbos. Well, having obligated herself to daven Shacharis, now her obligation is identical to that of men, and have the prohibition of eating and drinking before Kiddush, and that prohibition to eat and drink begins after Shacharis. Similarly, women who regularly daven Shacharis all week long, or even if they regularly daven Shacharis only on Shabbos, well, women like men should be able to eat before making Kiddush. They should be prohibited from eating until they make Kiddush. Drinking should be okay, as it is for men as well. Venira dechol zeh b'tiva b'alma. Now, the Minchas Yitzchak, after having quoted these two ideas, a strict opinion flowing from the Magen Avram and a more lenient opinion following from the Eshel Avram, more lenient opinion says before Shacharis, it's okay for the women to have something to eat and drink. After having said this, he says, Nireh, it seems to me that all this discussion revolves around te'ima ba'alma, just a little snack, just a little bit of eating. Aval im ritzonam lechol mamish, but if we're talking about eating a proper meal, as gam divrei Eshel Avram tzrichos kiddush, even the Eshel Avram would agree that kiddush is required. If we're having a serious meal and don't require kiddush, we end up with tarte desasre, two contradictory ideas working simultaneously. And this is impossible. If you want to follow the opinion of the Eshel Avram, and say that since this woman is regularly davening Shacharis, so for her, a simple prayer is not enough to fulfill her obligation. She has to daven Shacharis. If that's what you're going to say, if you take that opinion, it follows that if she has accepted upon herself the obligation to daven Shacharis, then just like a man, every day of the week, she cannot eat or drink anything until after Shacharis. V'im yatzu yedei chovis tefillah tzrichas l'kadesh. And if you hold the other opinion that any bakasha is sufficient for fulfilling the obligation of tefillah, and she does not have to daven Shacharis, well, now she has to make kiddush. V'im nomad ochos machmas chulsha. And if you want to base the leniency on the idea that men, women, anyone is allowed to eat or drink before Shacharis if they experience some weakness, chulsha, if someone needs to strengthen himself, if someone needs to strengthen herself by eating or drinking something in order to daven properly, well, that's okay. If the reason you're doing it is because of chulsha, weakness, well, tzrichas gamkein l'kadesh, this also requires kiddush first, as we learn in all the svarim. Many quotes the different svarim where we find that idea. Bottom line, a little bit of eating and drinking should be okay for women before making kiddush. Ach, b'shas chag, if there's some pressure, time pressure, if there's no other solution to the problem, yesh litzaref ma de'isa b'das Torah. If push comes to shove, and the woman finds herself in a difficult situation, we can be lenient by taking into account the words of the Das Torah. Now, Das Torah, I always thought that's a great name for a sefer. Das Torah was written by Rabbi Shevach. He was one of the big names in Lithuania about back in the 1880s, 1890s, and he was a heavyweight. He was quite influential, and he quotes the Chidushe Maharam Chalafa. Maharam, Rav Moshe Chalafa, they call him in yeshivas. Chalafa is probably not a good pronunciation of his name. It's an Arabic name, and halawa in Arabic is, of course, well known to speakers of English, because speakers of English are usually familiar with a sugary confection made out of sesame seeds, which English speakers usually call something like halva or halva. In Israel, it's sold under that name as well, halva, but that was his name, Rav Moshe, the sweet one, halawa in Arabic, Rav Moshe halawa, Rav Moshe the sweet one. That's what they called him. He was a disciple of the Rashba. Actually, not for very long. He was a disciple of the Rashba only for a brief time before the Rashba passed away, and then he became a disciple of the Rashba's son. In any event, the Maharam Chalafa, one of the big rabbis in 14th century Spain, He'id b'shem Moro HaRashba, he quoted his teacher, the Rashba, and he was for a while the teacher of the Rashba at the end of the Rashba's life. Rashba said, Nashim P'turot Mikiddush Shacharis. Women simply have no obligation for Kiddush in the morning on Shabbos and Yom Tov. At night, yes. In the morning, no. Now, this is an opinion of the Rashba, which is not embraced by subsequent poskim, but it is an opinion. We cannot erase it from the world. It is an opinion, and b'shas hadchak, we can then join this opinion with the other reasons for leniency and say a woman does not have to make kiddush on Shabbos and Yom Tov morning if she wants to eat a little bit. This is his position. Now, the idea, the methodology here of relying upon this maverick opinion of the Rashba, which is really a das yochid, unique opinion of the Rashba. None of the other big name poskim embrace this idea that women are exempt from kiddush in the morning, even though they're chayav in the evening. This idea, the methodological approach of using this maverick leniency to join together with other reasons for leniency has its roots in the Mishnah in Maseches Edius. The Mishnah in Edius asks the question, why do we in the Mishnah bother quoting minority opinions? Since halacha is always in accord with the majority, why do we bother teaching our disciples the minority opinions? Let's just teach them the majority opinions, which is the definitive normative halacha. And the Mishnah answers, B'shas Hatchak, we teach the minority opinions because B'shas Hatchak, when you are under pressure and have difficulty fulfilling the majority opinion, B'shas Hatchak, it is correct to rely upon the minority view. Now, that's an idea which has its roots in the Mishnah, in Maseches Edius, and that's an idea which poskim have applied. It's a method which poskim have applied through the generations and continue to apply today. B'shas Hatchak, although we normally would not instruct people to follow the minority view of the Rashba, B'shas Hatchak, that opinion wakes up and can be embraced and joined together with other reasons for leniency, and we can let the woman eat and drink without kiddush. Now, the Minchas Yitzchak, the author of this tshuva we are reading, quotes the opinion of the Maharam Halafa or Halava. He quotes the opinion from a sefer he found it in the Das Torah. But I always like to search out the original sources. I, as much as possible, do not like to rely upon quotations. When the great Rav, whoever he may be, quotes so-and-so, I always want to try to find the original quotation if I can. This is a motif which runs through my life. I happen to be multilingual. I speak many languages. And whenever I read in the newspaper, in English, in Spanish, in French, in whatever language, Hebrew, Arabic, whenever I read in the newspaper, some great world leader said so-and-so, a quotation from some great world leader, I often ask myself, I wonder what that great world leader actually said. We have here a translation in the newspaper I'm reading at the moment, but what did he say in his or her native language? And I go find a newspaper in the language of the great world leader who's been quoted, and I try to find his or her original words, and inevitably, in every case, there are no exceptions. In every case, translation fails to convey precision in the original statement. There's always something lost, or something added, or something changed. A precision in natural language is impossible to translate, and so I'm in the rut of trying to always find the original text of the quotation, and often when you find it, much light is shed on what the author wrote, light which you would not perceive in the way he is quoted in a later sefer. Here are the words of the Maharam Halafa. Ramban Zal katav she'asur litom klum kodem kiddush kamo b'kiddush halayla. According to the Ramban, according to the Ramban, was the teacher of the Rajba. According to the Ramban, you're not allowed to eat on Shabbos and Yom Tov morning before Kiddush, just like you're not allowed to eat on Friday night and Leil Yom Tov before Kiddush. Ve'eno mechuva. This idea is not clear. De'ein ze Kiddush mamish, because Kiddush on Shabbos morning, Kiddush on Yom Tov morning is not really Kiddush. Shekvar nitkadesh hayom pam achat, because we already sanctified the Shabbos, or we already sanctified Yom Tov. At nighttime, when Yom Tov began, when Shabbos began, we already sanctified. We were already Makadesh the day. We already were Makadesh Shabbos or Yom Tov. V'lo matzinu lekiddush bezdin balayla. In Kiddush HaChodesh, when witnesses would come to the Sanhedrin and testify, we saw the new moon, then the Bezdin would sanctify the new month by declaring the new month to have begun. That's what we do at the beginning of Shabbos. That's what we do at the beginning of Yom Tov. We sanctify the day by declaring that Shabbos or Yom Tov has begun. That's what Kiddush is all about. But Kiddush HaChodesh in the Sanhedrin for every new month was not done at nighttime. Ella shehachamim tiknu likboa sudaso b'yom al yayin. Making Kiddush on Shabbos and Yom Tov morning is a din d'Rabbanan. Hachamenu said normally people in those days always drank wine with the meal. Wine, people would drink wine at every breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everyone always drank wine with every meal. In late antiquity, that was absolutely, through the Middle Ages, that was absolutely standard in countries that had plentiful vineyards. Wine was, of course, part of every Shabbos meal. But normally, you'd begin the meal with hamotzi, a weekday meal. It would begin with hamotzi, and then in the course of the meal, you would have wine together with the meal. Chachamim, Chazal said that on Shabbos and Yom Tov, you should begin the meal with the wine. U'mismechei le'akra, and they found some reasons for this in different verses. Aval midrabanan, but it's all drabanan. Drinking the wine before the meal and making Kiddush on the wine before the meal. This is all derabanan. Min haTorah, Kiddush the previous night was sufficient. Hilkach mutar letom. That's why the Rashba disagrees with the Ramban. This is why it's permissible to eat and drink before Kiddush on Shabbos and Yom Tov morning. Not at night. At night, you have to first make Kiddush before eating and drinking. But in the morning, it's not really Kiddush anyway, since all you have to do is begin the meal with wine rather than having wine with the meal. The wine begins with meal. That begins the meal. Well, you can eat and drink before. Mina nami denashim peturos mimenu kevan de'eno ela derabanan. Since the obligation of making Kiddush on Shabbos and Yom Tov morning is only derabanan, the Rashba held it's only applying to men and not women at all. Okay, this is all very interesting. We have the Das Torah quoting the Maharam, who quotes the Rashba, saying that women are exempt from Kiddush on Shabbos and Yom Tov morning. Well, this is very interesting, but it's a secondhand knowledge. One of the disciples of the Rashba quoted the Rashba as having saying this, who says the Talmud got it right. The endless examples of Talmidim who incorrectly quote their teachers. Literature is chock full of that. Who says that the Maharam got the quotation correct, that his teacher, the Rashba, really did exempt women from Kiddush on Shabbos morning and Yom Tov morning, unlike the Ramban, who was his teacher, who required it. Well, let's take a look at the tshuva of the Rashba himself. Here's a tshuva which the Rashba himself wrote. Asur litom klum kodem haKiddush bein balayla bein biyom ledivri hakol. Everyone agrees that you cannot eat or drink before Kiddush, Friday night, Shabbos morning, Yontif night, Yontif morning. Everyone agrees you cannot eat or drink. You cannot even drink water before Kiddush on Shabbos and Yontif. Aval Rambam matir b'mayim. Rambam says water's okay. You can drink water before Kiddush on Shabbos and Yontif. And Rav Zcharia Halevi katav the Kiddush b'yomama d'Rabbanan, and Rav Zcharia Halevi, 12th century, late 12th century Spain, he wrote that Kiddush at night is min haTorah, Kiddush of the day is d'Rabbanan, v'itam mekame mide leslan ba, and the Rav Zcharia Halevi wrote, tasting a little bit of food before Kiddush is okay. It's not really eating. Just tasting a little bit is okay before Kiddush. So the Das Torah, the source, which teaches us that there is an opinion to rely upon for women to eat and drink before Kiddush on Shabbos and Yontif morning, is based on the Maharam Halacha. When we look in the Maharam Halacha, he quotes this in the name of his teacher, the Rashba. When we look at the words of the Rashba, we fail to find this idea. On the contrary, in the tshuva of the Rashba, he says, the Razah, Rav Zcharia Halevi, is the one who permits eating and drinking a little bit before Kiddush, implying, when the Rashba says it's Rav Zcharia Halevi who permits this, implying that he himself prohibited it. Apparently, the Talmud was not paying careful attention in Shi'ur that day, and when the Rashba taught the Talmidim, including the Maharam Mechalava, taught them that according to Rav Zcharia Halevi, women are exempt from Kiddush on Shabbos and Yontif morning, the Talmud, the Maharam Mechalava, heard the exemption from Kiddush, but did not hear that it's only Rav Zcharia Halevi who has this leniency, implying that the Rashba himself was not happy with it. Now, in any event, B'shas Adchak, the basic underlying methodology remains in place. B'shas Adchak, under situations when you're under pressure, one can rely upon the maverick opinion. It turns out that the maverick opinion is not the Maharam Mechalafa, and it's not the Rashba. It turns out that the lenient opinion, the maverick lenient opinion, is that of Rav Zcharia Halevi, which methodologically does not change anything. Bottom line, there is this lenient opinion, which the Minchas Yitzchak teaches us that women can rely upon b'shas Adchak. Now, let me make one concluding comment about the Minchas Yitzchak. Minchas Yitzchak has a well-deserved reputation for being extraordinarily strict. And since he has a well-deserved reputation for being extraordinarily strict, if he sees room for a leniency here to rely upon, well, we know it's really the opinion of Rav Zcharia Halevi, if he sees room to rely upon a maverick, lenient opinion exempting women from Kiddush on Shabbos and Yontif morning, well, that's something that we can embrace as well. Let's go one step further. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, the great Rav, one of the great poskim of the 20th century here in Yerushalayim.
Sorry, Rav, there's a question in the chat.
Yes, Jody.
There's a question in the chat.
Yes, who has a question?
There's a question in the chat.
I don't have any questions.
Yosef is asking, can you have a drink of water on Friday night before Kiddush if you're very thirsty?
No, make Kiddush and then drink the water. That's what you should do. Okay.
And you don't have to eat then, you pay for it to eat later with the meal.
Kiddush and if you're thirsty, make Kiddush and then drink the water. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach did not publish this himself, but he had a Talmud by the name of Rabbi Fuchs, who published a sefer and quotes Shlomo. You already know how nervous I get when I find the great rabbis quoted in Sfarim that they did not write themselves and did not edit themselves and did not approve of themselves. Katav li Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Rav Shlomo Zalman wrote to me as follows. He says, "Le'inyan benot seminarim, teenage girls here in Yerushalayim who go to seminar, high school, kadameh, or other kinds of schools. Rotzot le'echol bebeitan kodem halichatan lebeit sefer. They want to eat breakfast at home before going to school. Reba Mishnah Brura, shemachme b'shachris u'mincha. Mishnah Brura is strict and says, no, you have to daven before eating breakfast. L'maisa nahug la'akel. In fact, the teenage girls here in Yerushalayim are lenient. They eat breakfast at home, and in fact, what's going on is they're eating breakfast at home and then going to school. And in school, they are davening, right? In the seminars, the girls, the women, young women, daven together. So they're eating breakfast at home and then davening together in the school. This is against what the Mishnah Brura writes and against what the other poskim write, but that's what they are doing. Rav Shlomo Zalman said it's okay as long as the young women, these high school students, seminar girls, as long as they say some little prayer before eating, and they should also recite Kriya Shema before eating. Min hadin. Kriya Shema has nothing to do with it, but it's good chinuch to get the girls accustomed to reciting Kriya Shema every morning before they eat. That's advisable. As far as Halacha is concerned, the women in general, these teenage girls, surely have no obligation to recite Kriya Shema, but it's good chinuch for them to do it. Bottom line, in fact, the girls are eating breakfast first, full breakfast, then davening together when they get to school, and that's okay, according to Shlomo. He does not explain his reasoning, he does not explain the underlying sources, but this puts him in line with the previous tshuva of the Minchas Yitzchak. I don't know whether his reasoning is exactly the same or not, but the conclusions are the same. B'shas Chag, if necessary, the women, in this case girls, can eat and drink breakfast before davening. Now let's look at the opinion of the Igros Moshe, Moshe Feinstein, the great Rav of New York. Isha she'ochelet kodem tefillah b'Shabbos im tzricha l'kadesh. If a woman is eating before davening on Shabbos morning, does she have to make Kiddush? The question assumes the leniency of the previous two poskim, that of course it's okay for her to eat and drink before davening. The only question is, should she make Kiddush? This has to do with women who are eating before davening. Tshuva. Yesh nashim shemekilot b'achila kodem tefillah, lachar she'amru eze bakasha. Some women are eating and drinking before Shacharis because they are relying on the fact that they said some little tefillah before eating and drinking, based on the Magen Avram that we've spoken about so often. Magen Avram, who wrote, Rov Nashim lo nahagu litpalel b'tamidas. Magen Avram told us that most women, in fact, are not davening regularly because they're relying on some little prayer to fulfill their obligation. Ani tameh, and I'm amazed. I'm surprised. I find this difficult to understand, the Igros Moshe. Rav Moshe Feinstein writes, Im chachamim tefillah shmona esrei kanashim, if you hold that women are obligated to daven Shachris and Mincha, how is it possible that most of our women are ignoring their obligation? It must be, since in fact most of the Torah observant women are not davening Shachris, it must be that the man of Ram is correct and there is no obligation for them to do so. Lachein, therefore, af elu hayadot litpalel. Therefore, even women who know how to daven Shmona Esrei, umitpalelot b'chol yom, even women who daven Shachris every day, yesh shelo kiblu alayu isur achila kodem tefillah. Women who daven every day Shachris, or women who daven every Shabbos Shachris, have accepted this upon themselves. Well, when they accepted the tefillah upon themselves, who says they accepted the prohibition to eat before tefillah? Apparently, they accepted only the obligation to daven, and therefore, nahagu v'ochlot achar amru eza bakasha. Apparently, the women who accept upon themselves the ongoing obligation to daven regularly have not accepted upon themselves the obligation to refrain from eating until davening. B'tzarech iyun ladina, this deserves further analysis and further discussion. But in any event, elu sherashaot le'achol kodem atfilah, those who are allowed to eat and drink before davening, im tzvichot b'Shabbos v'yontef la'asot kiddush. Well, those who are eating before davening, do they have to make kiddush? The Mishnah Brura writes regarding men, Hine lani yadati b'ishto eina tzricha l'kadesh. Mishnah Brura makes perfectly clear that men have to make kiddush before eating. What about women? In my humble opinion, Rav Moshe Feinstein writes, women do not have to make kiddush on Shabbos morning, on Yom Tov morning, before eating and drinking. Why not? Taharei hi mishubedet leba'ala le'echol dafka imo. Because women are obligated to eat their meals together with their husbands. That's a general obligation applying to women all week long. They are halachically obligated to eat their meals together with their husbands. V'kevan sheba'ala asur le'echol kodem tefillah, and since the husband cannot eat and drink before davening, v'iyavshar lo le'echol suda kodem tefillah, since it's impossible for the husband to have a proper meal before davening, ein zezman achila gamla, since for the husband, before davening Shacharis on Shabbos morning, the time of eating has not yet arrived because he's not allowed to eat or drink. And since she is obligated to eat and drink with him, then for her as well, the time of eating has not yet arrived. Lachein lo chal chovas kiddush gam aleha. Therefore, since her schedule of eating and drinking depends upon her husband's schedule, and since he does not have to make kiddush, she as well is allowed to eat and drink without kiddush. So here we have an explanation for why women should be exempt from making kiddush on Shabbos and Yom Tov morning if they want to eat or drink first. Now, but the idea is all rooted in the woman's obligation to take her meals, to eat her meals together with her husband. Where does that obligation come from? Well, you can see it in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Even HaEzer. Here's a quotation of the Shulchan Aruch. Baal sheratza liten liishto mizonotea haru'uyim la. A husband who wants to give his wife the food for all her meals, v'tiya ochelet v'shotel atzma, and he says Here's all your food. Eat by yourself without me, without my participation. I'm not going to be at the meals. I won't be there. Here's all your food. Eat it yourself. Reshut biyado. He's allowed to do so. If the husband is going on a business trip, he can leave all the food she needs. Husbands are halachically obligated to provide mizonot. Husbands are halachically obligated to provide food for the wife. That's one of the obligations of the ketubah. Read the ketubah, and you'll discover very quickly that among the husband's obligations are to provide food for the wife. Well, if he's going on a business trip or whatever, has a business meeting, whatever the reason is, he can give her the food and say, here, I've fulfilled my obligation. I've given you the food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, whatever it is. Eat by yourself. Uvilvad, the Shulchan Aruch says, as long as Yochal Ima B'Leil Shabbat, as long as on Friday night he eats together with her. Friday night, he's not allowed to say, here's your food and eat without me. Friday night, the husband is obligated to eat with the wife. This is one of the halachic obligations of marriage. Now think about it for a moment. It seems clear to me, and I hope you will agree, that the Shulchan Aruch is clearly teaching us that the husband eating the meal together with the wife is an obligation of the husband and therefore a right of the wife. Obligations and rights are two halves of the same coin. You look at it from one direction, it's an obligation. Look at it from the other direction, it's a right. If I lend someone money, that person has an obligation to repay me, and I have a right to be repaid. Obligations and rights are two sides of the same coin, just depends upon which direction you look at it from. And here, the relationship between husband and wife, as far as eating and drinking together is concerned, well, he is obligated to eat with her, and she has a right that he accompany her, that he be with her during the week, at least on Leil Shabbos. Igros Moshe has switched the direction of obligation, and the Igros Moshe views it as obligation of the wife to eat with the husband, when the Shulchan Aruch clearly implies that it's the obligation of the husband to eat with the wife. And it makes a big difference, because whichever side of the coin is the right has the ability to forego his or her rights. If you have a right to something, you can forego your rights. If you have an obligation, you're not free to give up your obligations, but you are free if you wish your rights. According to the Shulchan Aruch, where husband and wife eating together is a right of the woman to have the company of her husband. She, if she chooses, can forego that right, but he cannot, according to the Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah adds, Yesh Holkim Usvira Lahu Delo Yuchal Lomar She Ken Kibla Alea Miritzona. The Ramah emphasizes again that it's her and only her who has the ability to forego this right and excuse the husband from being company at the meal. He does not have the right to, he does not have the ability to forego this company. It's his obligation and her right. In any event, according to the Igros Moshe, wives are obligated to follow the eating schedule of the husband, which seems not to correspond at all with what the Shulchan Aruch says, but this is the opinion of the Igros Moshe. Wives are obligated to follow the eating schedule of the husbands, and if he has not finished Shachris yet, then she also does not yet have an obligation of Kiddush. These are the principal opinions regarding eating and drinking before davening all week long and making Kiddush on Shabbos and Yom Tov. With this, I'm going to pause and ask you if you have any questions you want to ask.
There is another question on the chat.
Another question on? Yes.
On the chat.
Yes.
It says you're at shul far from your house where you're making kiddush, and people are walking back with you, and you'll find it hard to talk with them without having a drink. Oh, Yosef says
Yeah.
maybe you can ask
Yeah. 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 Because you are so habituated to having a scotch every morning that without your morning eye opener, you cannot have a conversation. If that's the case, we're talking about um, being habituated to whatever your substance is. Well, let's leave that discussion for an analysis of addiction and habituation.
What about
If it's
what about
only social, you just want to talk with people, well, then one should make kiddush first.
you have to make kiddush at shul? Because he's talking
Yeah,
specifically about Friday night. And even for a drink of water, you have to make kiddush before you have to have the drink of water. Even for a
correct,
drink.
correct,
Okay.
correct. There are many chuvot
Uh,
written by Rabbanim to Chazanim, who say, if I could, just have a sip of water from time to time, I'll be able to daven shacharis much better as a chazan. Well, no, you cannot do that.
Then he says most people will eat something. Not sure what you mean.
No, I
Most
don't have
people
your son.
oh have a drink of water. Most people will eat something.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain yourself? On Shabbos morning, most people will eat something. You mean before davening?
Nothing we have said today covers the common Hasidic practice of having something to eat or drink before going to daven on Shabbos morning. After all, the Hasidic practice has largely to do with the late time of davening in Hasidic synagogues in Eastern Europe. The non-Hasidim daven very early and had no particular reason to want to eat or drink before. Hasidim, on the other hand, in Eastern Europe, davened much later and therefore were hungry by the time Shacharis came along.
Rabbi, can I give you the
Especially on
scenario?
Shabbos.
So the scenario I'm thinking about is I'm at shul on Friday night, and I've got guests coming, and to make kiddush, I'll have to walk home, and the guests will probably want to talk to me on the way back, and I'm very thirsty, and it's just hard for me to talk to them, and they might feel uncomfortable. They might feel bad. They might feel I don't really want them to come or whatever, or I'm not really happy with them, or they might make some sort of assumption that is like really serious because of the significance of making your guests feel comfortable. That's very important. And to solve that, I could just have a drink, but I would be having it before Kiddush because it would be very weird to make Kiddush at shul before I go home. Like, there's nothing set up. I'm at some random shul somewhere. There's nothing set up for Kiddush. We were like, what are you doing? This is not yours. You can't go and make Kiddush. So that's really, I suppose that a lot of this is about weighing the different factors and coming to a decision of what is the correct thing to do in this case. We could say, call it a shasat chakar. I'm not sure, because if I don't have a drink, it's going to be hard for me to talk with the same enthusiasm and effusement to my guests to make them feel comfortable and welcome, to inquire about them and so on. I'll be just sort of like trying to, just sort of get home and make kiddush without
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, in your synagogue on Friday night, does someone make kiddush?
No.
No, not
There's
at all.
this particular shul was Mayanot shul. No one's making kiddush. You just
No
daven,
kiddush.
a long
Yeah,
davening, lots of
that's
singing.
Israeli. That's the Israeli way. Then you have no choice but to be mitgaber. You have no choice but to gird your loins and do the best you can. You don't need me to recommend having something to eat or drink before going to shul. That might help. I don't know, but you don't need me for practical advice. That you can figure out yourself. but you should work out some solution to this problem.
Saying there is no opinion that allows you to have
No.
something to drink before Kiddush.
When I say there's no such opinion, I mean there's no such published opinion. If you ask different rabbanim, you might find someone who's mekel.
Sometimes I've seen, thank you, Rabbi. Sometimes I've seen in Australia that they'll make Kiddush. No, they won't make Kiddush. They'll just sort of have food before Kabbalah Shabbos after Mincha. Yeah. Is that
well? The obligation of making Kiddush begins after the tefillah.
which tefillah?
In this case, if it's Friday night, Ma'ariv.
Okay. So what about if it's Shkia or something like that? The
food, the shul serves food after Kabbalah Shabbos. The Kabbalah Shabbos, of course, has to be after Plag Mincha, and after Plag Mincha is already the time when one could make Kiddush. I do not know what the basis of the leniency is upon which they do this. I don't know why it should be permitted. If you ever find out, let me know.
Whereabouts in Australia?
In Melbourne.
Melbourne. Oh, Melbourne. Oh, Melbourne. Oh, of course. Melbourne.
Sydney, when they do it at dodgy times, they do it with Kiddush, as far as I know. Big shul.
Yeah, Kiddush. In Sydney, they do it correctly.
Talking about Friday night that, it's just the timing. I don't recall exactly when they do it, but I just remember that it was a little bit odd. Like I don't think it was.
Indeed, I do not know what the basis of leniency might be. If you find out, kindly let me know.
Okay.
I have two little questions. The one little question is a halva, the sweet, named after Rav Moshe Halacha, or it just has the same name? They both have the same origin of being sweet.
Well, the confection, the sweet, the candy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Halawa in Arabic means a sweet. It's the word for sweet, and it is a sweet. The word went from Arabic into Turkish, and also into Farsi, into the Persian language, and the English comes from the Persian version of the word, but it all goes back to the Arabic. In Arabic today, that sweet, that candy, that confection with sugar and sesame seeds is called in Arabic halawa. Halawa. The halawa is the proper literary pronunciation. The Palestinians, in the Palestinian pronunciation, the first vowel is dropped, and instead of halawa, they say hlawa, 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 hlawa. That's like the Palestinian pronunciation. Palestinian Arabic is a syllable-timed language. Languages of the world divide into two categories. There are languages which are syllable-timed, like English and Hebrew. There are languages which are stress-timed. In languages which I said it backwards. In languages which are stress-timed, like English, it's the stressed syllable which is longer in duration. That's a stress-timed language. The stressed syllables are longer in duration, which means the non-stressed syllables get shrunk in duration, which means the vowels get shrunk. And since the vowels get shrunk, you end up with indistinct murmured vowels. Other languages, which are time-stressed languages, where every syllable gets exactly the same duration, like pearls on a chain, you don't get accented syllables at all. Every syllable is exactly the same, and they retain the quality of their vowels. They never shorten or murmur the quality of their vowels. Classical Arabic retains the purity of all its vowels. The Palestinian pronunciation murmurs, reduces the vowels and unaccented syllables.
Mm.
I don't know why this is interesting, but that's it.
And my other question was do you have any opinion on the translation of Shna Agnon, Visitor in the Night?
I've not
The
read
English.
it, but of course I've not read it, but of course it's horrible. I do not get along well with translations.
Yeah.
If it's a language where I cannot read the original, so I read the translation, but I'm always wondering when I read the translation, I wonder what the original said.
Yeah.
I wonder, and well,
When you make
know,
kiddush, when someone makes
yes.
kiddush, do you need to drink the wine that they have made kiddush with?
Yes and no. Yes and no. On Friday night, Kiddush is a bracha. And the rule is Shomea Ka'ona. If you hear the bracha and the person reciting the bracha is reciting it for you, and you listen, and you should say Amen at the end. If you fail to say Amen, b'diavad, it's okay. One can fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush at the meal Friday night by listening, and you should say Amen. You don't have to drink the wine. Someone has to drink the wine, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be the one who made Kiddush. It could be one of the listeners. It could be everyone together. The wine has to get drunk, but
So let's say
you do
you
not.
drink some wine from the kiddush cup, do you have to make another bracha hagafen on the wine?
No, 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 no. You do not. You do not. All this is Friday night, where Kiddush is a bracha. Buchat Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbos. On Shabbos morning and Yantif morning, Kiddush is only the wine. There is no, customary to recite all kinds of psukim before Kiddush, but this is not Kiddush. These are just recitation psukim which are being recited. On Shabbos morning, Kiddush is the drinking of the wine, as the sources said today. Tiknu su'uda al kos shel yayin. Chazal said you should begin the meal by drinking wine. Shabbos morning, you have to drink the wine or grape juice or Chomer Medina. Now I
So with
know that
Shabbos morning,
I know that what I just said flies in the face of common practice in many communities. I know that in many communities people are makpid. They're strict to actually drink some of the wine at night, and in the morning they aren't. And what I've just explained is just the opposite of what is the common practice.
okay.
Is the common practice wrong, or is there a justification for it?
I have no idea. I never found any justification for
Okay.
not for at night. You want to at night you want to drink the wine. That's fine. There's no objection to drinking the wine at night. But in the morning, I don't know what the justification is for not drinking.
So you can't in the morning hear Kiddush and then eat mazonos. That doesn't cover, you still have to drink the Kiddush.
You drink the wine or the grape juice or the Chomer Medina. One does not have to drink from the same cup that the person used in making Kiddush, as long as the wine or grape juice or Chomer Medina was on the table when Kiddush was being made. That's sufficient.
And does it have to be a kazayit, or can just be?
No, any amount. Not any amount. Malo lugmav, a mouthful. Malo lugmav, a little bit more than a sip.
So tiny little Kiddush cup with this much at this much, the tiny little Kiddush cup is not going to.
Right.
That's not even.
Now, according to those who hold that Coca-Cola or other soft drinks are Chomer Medina, then on Shabbos morning, if someone makes Kiddush and then you drink Coca-Cola or some other soft drink, that would be sufficient.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So in practice, on Shabbos day,
yes,
you need to drink some of the wine.
As far as I know, that's what all of the Sforim say. I know that it's common practice not to do that, but I've never found a justification for not drinking.
Okay. So you meant to have something to drink on Shabbos day, and you don't need to make a bracha.
It could be a soft drink.
You don't need to make a bracha on what it is you're drinking.
Correct, because the Beit
Yotze with the kiddush.
often covers often covers all of the beverages, just like hamotzi covers all of the foods.
Even
Please.
if you don't have a minimum amount, on any amount, you covered for all
Any
liquids,
amount.
right?
Correct. Any amount.
Rabbi, often I go to kiddushes and they say once you make kiddush, you hear kiddush, you're meant to have some mazonos. And the mazonos is often this mass-produced, unhealthy, some sort of cracker amalgamation that businesses manage to palm off as food and people buy it because it's got fancy packaging and it's convenient. Now,
And it tastes good.
it tastes okay, but it's pretty much
concoction of sugar, salt, and fat. I got it.
There we go. Now they're like, oh, you're meant to have like 4 of them to something or other. And I say, well, what happens if I just don't have any of them? What happens if I just don't have mazonos at all? Like what happens then? Can I not have herring? I just want to have some herring and like a bit of salad, and that's it. I don't actually want to have any crackers at all.
It says in the last parak of Psachim, rabbis teach us, Ein kiddush ella bimkom suda. Kiddush must be physically in the location where you're going to eat a suda. And then the post can talk endlessly about 2 corners of the same room, 2 rooms in the same house, exactly what is defined as the same location. But the Suda, in order for the Kiddush to be valid, you must eat a Suda physically in the same location. And whether that means under the same roof, but a different room, or 2 corners of the same room, or you have to be able to see the location where Kiddush was made. We can talk endlessly about defining what the location means. But Al Pi Pashtus, taking the meaning of the Gemara simply and straightforwardly, according to the Pashtus of the Rishonim, taking the words of the Rishonim simply and straightforward, what they mean is bread. You have to do netilas yadayim and eat bread, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, in the location where you make kiddush Friday night and Shabbos morning, same on Yontif. Now, I know that common practice is for someone to say boy prigofen, and then for people to eat those concoctions of sugar, fat, and salt, mazonis. I know that's commonly done, but the only justification I've found for it is in the Orach HaShulchan. The Orach HaShulchan suggests that maybe the justification for this runs along the following lines. There's a difference between Kiddush Friday night and Shabbos morning. He suggests maybe this is the explanation. He says Friday night Kiddush permits eating. Shabbos morning, it's the other way around. Shabbos morning, eating a meal requires Kiddush.
Wow.
This is what he suggests. And then he says, if my suggestion is correct, that justifies eating something less than hamotzi, that justifies mizonot or anything else, does not actually require Kiddush on Shabbos morning. And then when you get home and you're going to eat bread, then you should make Kiddush again. Therefore, if I'm stuck in a situation, which I try to avoid, but it happens, if I'm stuck in a situation where I have to participate in a Kiddush in the synagogue after davening on Shabbos morning, and they're going to be serving kugel and cake and herring and things like this, I prefer not to eat anything. But if I have to, so I'll eat something. But when I get home, I'll make Kiddush myself before eating bread. Relying
you'll eat
upon
something.
relying
are you permitted
on this maverick opinion.
Are you permitted to eat things that are not mazonos? I understand that if you don't have like a suda at the kiddush, then it's not considered a kiddush. But does that mean that you're forbidden to eat things before eating the mazonos at the kiddush. Really, my question is,
You could have the herring. You could have the herring. You could have the herring or fruits or vegetables. You could do it. It's okay. But if I were in your situation, when I got home, I'd make a kiddush again on wine or Homer Medina, grape juice, whatever, before hamotzi.
So the kiddush that you've made at the shul is sufficient to allow you to have bits and pieces?
Because in this case, b'shas Chak, I'm relying upon the opinion of the Aruch HaShulchan, a maverick opinion, that kiddush permits eating on Friday night, but on Shabbos morning, eating a proper meal requires kiddush. And therefore, if it's not going to be a proper meal in the synagogue, no kiddush is required. I do that at home.
And the kiddush, it's not considered kiddush unless you eat the crackers. Is that right?
No, eating crackers.
Unless you make a moitzi, it's not considered kiddush. Is that right?
Yeah, this makes it worse. If you are considering the crackers to be your meal, then they require the netilas yadayim and hamotzi and birkat hamazon.
So really, in that case, you would have some Homer Medina or grape wine. Then you could eat something, herring, fruit, whatever. The mazonos is irrelevant unless you are trying to pretend this is a meal, this is your meal, in which case it's not a good pretense. But the mazonos is not necessary at all.
Rabbi, you're suggesting that you don't need to make kiddush to have herring and fruits and stuff. You don't even make.
Absolutely correct. This is the maverick opinion of the Aruch HaShulchan. And when I get stuck somewhere and have no choice, I rely upon this maverick opinion.
To have kiddush and eat herring. And
Yeah,
then
you don't need kiddush. You don't need kiddush for the herring. You don't need kiddush for the herring. You don't need kiddush for the herring because on Shabbos morning, eating a meal demands kiddush. And herring is not a meal, so no kiddush required.
So the rabbi is saying that when you finish davening on Shabbos morning, you do not need to make kiddush before you start eating.
That is the maverick opinion of the Aruch HaShulchan, and b'shas Chak, one can rely upon that.
Is there another opinion that allows you to eat a non-meal without making kiddush? That's a regular accepted standard opinion, or only maverick opinion?
No, this is the maverick opinion of the Aruch HaShulchan. But the Aruch HaShulchan was not some minor authority. He was one of the big names.
So this is the Aruch HaShulchan, or like a sub sort of leniency of the Aruch HaShulchan? That's the Aruch HaShulchan's opinion.
This is how he suggests we can justify the practice of all the people.
Okay.
So I think, sorry, you said when you get caught in that situation, you do what?
I eat whatever they put in front of me, and when I get home and I'm going to do hamotzi at home, I make kiddush again at home before hamotzi.
Okay, again, so you made kiddush at the kiddush before you ate the herring?
I didn't like kiddush. I heard kiddush, but that's irrelevant, even if I didn't hear them.
Wow, but I'm so confused.
Yes, because we said over and over again. We said over and over again, you can't eat before kiddush. But
yes.
Now you ask me to justify the practice of many synagogues where that's exactly what they're doing. And
no, they make kiddush. They make kiddush,
but it's not b'makom suda, and kiddush shalom b'makom suda is usually worthless.
So considering a suda is only with hamotzi, that's a suda.
Well, it can be crackers. One can make a suda with mazonos, but then the mazonos require netilas yadayim, hamotzi, and birkas hamazon.
And they have to have like a lot of crackers.
You can make a suda out of chocolate cake if you eat enough of it, but it requires netilas yadayim, hamotzi, and birkas hamazon. If you're saying the chocolate cake,
how much crackers or chocolate cake do you need to have? You need to have a two kazayas?
According to the Balatanya, 8 kibetzim. It's a humongous amount.
8 kibetzim. So 8 kibetzim is like maybe an entire chocolate cake.
8 kibetzim, a humongous amount of food. 8 kibetzim.
Well, one kazayas is, let's say, two wafers. So
No,
one
not a
kebab,
kibbutz. 8 eggs. 8 eggs. Can you imagine eating 8 eggs at one meal? It's a huge amount of food.
yeah, but an
Rav
egg is
Fink,
quite dense. Egg is quite
hold on a
dense.
second. Hold on 1 sec. It sounds like the Aruch HaShulchan was trying to find a justification for something that had become common practice. Not
Exactly.
that some. So how did it become such common practice? No, no answer.
Well, it makes sense, Judy. After you finish school, you want to eat something with the boys. You have something to eat with everyone. That's what it makes sense what you're meant to do. Everyone has a bit of food after the shul, and then they go home. People don't want to have a whole meal because they're not there for a meal. They're there for a quick chat. So that's normative behavior. It sort of makes sense. The
It's
people have
become
inducted.
normal. Yeah.
No, it is normative behavior that you have a meeting with people, you have something to eat. So you can't do it during shuls, you do it just after shul. That people don't want to have a whole meal, so they have like a little bit of something.
Okay. Okay. Yesh al milasmoch, namely the Aruch HaShulchan.
So why do people make kiddush at these after shul these kiddushes if it's not a
Yeah.
kiddush event because
Well,
there's no hamoitzi?
why in Chutzlaritz do most shuls make Kiddush on Friday night when no one fulfills his or her obligation by that Kiddush? That's a minhag.
To get people for food or something. I don't know.
It's a minhag.
It's in the siddur.
Yeah, it used to, correct, but it comes from the days, back in the good old days, visitors in town lodged in the synagogue, and the
Oh,
community provided meals for lodgers in the synagogue. People were just traveling, passing through. So the community made kiddush for the visitors who were lodging in the synagogue, and that's where the lodgers would eat their meal provided by the community. So that made perfect sense. But we don't have those lodgers anymore, and we still do it. And back in those days, those same lodgers, after Shachris, would be served their full meal provided by the community. The community provided them a place to sleep in the synagogue and provided them with meals because they're passing through town. And of course, they needed Kiddush.
wow. That's unbelievable. Wild. Thank you very much.
Okay, be well. Have a good
Thank
week
Yeah.
and a safe week, and eventually a good Shabbos, and we'll meet again next week in Mitzvah Hashem
Amen.
on Monday. On Monday, correct.
you.
Okay,
Amen.
bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi. Yeah,
Shalom, shalom.
thank you. Learn something new, right? Learn something new every day.
Baruch Hashem.
That is beyond crazy. That is beyond crazy. This holiday. You know this.